What's up, everybody? Thanks for tuning in to The Standard. Today we have Jimmy Farris, ex-NFL athlete, ex-Super Bowl champion, now an author and a business guy. Jim, man, I appreciate having you on here.
Man, it's so nice to be on. Our relationship goes way back, and so it'll be fun to kind of chat about the beginnings of your business and some things about my career and just get into some stuff.
I got to ask you right out the jump, did you really race Terrell Owens?
I did, yeah. I've got it on film. I got it on video. So here's the story.
Let me hear it, because I was looking on it, and I couldn't. I was trying to find this video, but I couldn't find it.
The quick story. We trained together in Atlanta for a couple years. So this would have been the summer of 2005. We got talking trash in a workout, and, you know, Terrell was always up for any type of challenge, any competition. So we started talking about who would win in a race. Of course, he was like, I'll smoke you, and I said, you won't. So we set a date that was about a month or 6 weeks out, and it was this whole thing where, hey, we were going to train and get ready, and it was right before we were about to go back to training camp anyway, so it worked with our training, and so we set the date, and on the date, a couple news crews in Atlanta heard about it, some people in Philly heard about it, and so we met at this track, Oglethorpe University outside of Atlanta, and news cameras were there, a bunch of people from the training facility where we worked out at were there. So we ran 440s. And you'll understand this too. We ended up running them within the course of probably like 10 or 15 minutes.
So pretty hot.
Which
Not
is
a lot of rest.
Yeah, which is difficult to do, right? So the first one we ran, we hit arms we kind of both veered towards the center and we hit arms, and so we just stopped. Okay. The second one, I false started. Okay. The third one, I won. And then the fourth one, he won. So, yes, I did beat him 1 out of the 4 times we ran. But we ran 4 of them that day. 2 of them were kind of wiped out. The third one, I won, and the fourth one, he won. And I say that he won the fourth one just because he had that long stride, that long turnover. I was tired after running 3 hot 40s in a row. And so, but yeah, that's true. I've got it on film. I got it on my phone if you want to see it afterwards.
And you're still talking smack to this day.
100%.
Racing, and here, I know he would, he was racing Tyreek Hill.
Yeah.
Do you think you beat him now?
No. Because Terrell still trains as if he's trying to play. So, and I respect that about him. It's just I've moved on to different things, and so I don't train that way anymore. But I definitely couldn't beat him now. No, he's in phenomenal shape.
T.O. is the man. That's crazy.
You know, that if you want to go there, Terrell, people have their opinion of him. He's got his public persona. He and I have had our issues personally. When I needed a mentor, a friend, a big brother, somebody to show me the ropes, that was Terrell Owens, my rookie year in San Francisco. He was everything in that respect to me. I modeled everything he did. I copied everything that he did. If Terrell, whatever he was eating for lunch, I was eating. If he was wearing tights at practice, I wore them. If he was tying his shoes a certain way, I did it. And I did that because I figured this guy's the best in the world. And if I want to get better and I need to get better immediately, if I can try to replicate everything he's doing to the best of my ability, then I got to improve. I got to be better, right? And so he recognized that. And rather than kind of shun me or clown me about that, he brought me and took me under his wing. And he was like, hey, here's what I'm doing. Here's why I'm doing this. Here's how you can do this. Hey, I was watching you in one-on-ones today. Try this. Really became a mentor and a big brother to me. And regardless of what our relationship is now, I'm forever indebted and grateful to him for who he was to me when I needed him.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. So going back to us, when did we meet? Because I was trying to think about that too. So because I worked with Jake first. I actually think before Joe, even though Jake's a younger one. But remember, you were a little skeptical coming in, didn't know about us. Mike, Jake and Joe's dad.
So you and I had met, I want to say, 2012, 2013.
That's right when I started.
Because I was living here in Boise at the time. So I was in Atlanta up until 2011. I moved back here for like 3-4 years and then ended up going back to Atlanta. So we met in that time period, and that was just because you were over, I think you'd already gotten into that facility over at Axiom.
Yep.
And I was working out over there. And the guys that were in there previous to you were also friends of mine. And so I remember going over there one day, and it was kind of different, and you were in there. And so we met then and just kind of started
That's how it was.
talking about some of our mutual acquaintances and all this type of stuff. And then, like you said, it was some years later when Jake started coming over there.
Okay.
The only thing I'll disagree with, I don't know that I was ever skeptical of you, truthfully.
Oh, okay.
And I know you don't mean, you're not really saying I didn't believe in you, but I just was really curious as to what your approach was, because I'd been really fortunate, throughout my pro career to have worked out with some of who at the time were the top trainers in the world, certainly in the country in pro sports. And so I was always just really curious, if you remember some of those conversations we'd have about, shin angle and dorsiflex, all this real in-depth type stuff that I was really into. And so I think for me, it was just more of a practice of like, I want to know what this guy's thinking, because I loved what you guys were doing, and you clearly had, a system and a kind of a blueprint that you were working from. And I'm always curious about that kind of stuff. And so I think that was the beginning of our relationship. And then when you started training my nephews and everything, we just kind of went from there.
I love it.
Yeah.
So you wrote a book.
I did.
Which is crazy to me, man. I think, I don't know if it's something I want to do. I don't know if I'll ever have the knowledge or the background to do that, but I think that ability and then the amount of effort to put into a book, to me, that's crazy. Like it blows my mind to think about writing a book. I was going through some of your stuff, and I love the title. So it's Be a Pro, but I thought the coolest thing was your blueprint to a professional level of achievement. And just thinking about that, to me, it's just from hearing that word, and I want to go into what you came up with it, or just that sentence, like your blueprint to being a professional in your level of achievement. So not professional in sports, but everything that you do. Yesterday we had the College of Idaho. We work with 4 athletes. We're academic All-Americans. So there's only 1 quarterback in the country. There's only 1 tight end. And the 4 athletes that got picked were like our 4 best players, which to me is like similar to that. So like the way you do one thing, and Robert posted this yesterday, the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. Those guys, like Ben, we hired Ben Ruby, and it's like everything that he does is to a certain standard, to where he was the best tight end in the country, or one of the best tight ends, and he was an academic All-American. You know what I mean? Which, I don't know if you and I were that back then, but like to see those guys do that on one team, most of the time sometimes it might be like the 3rd string center that wins it or something like that. You know what I mean? To have those top 4 is huge. And then to think about being a pro in your everyday life, even when it's not in sports, when I hold myself to those standards and everything else, everything that I do is on another level. You know what I mean? And when I see people do that, which is why I like a lot of, like most of my mentors are ex-athletes that run successful businesses, I think it's because that's how we look at business. When you wrote that, where did that sentence come from, and what did that mean to you? That was just my outside perspective on it.
So let me give you a little background on that. My rookie year in San Francisco, undrafted, signed as a free agent, was in the first mini camp right after the draft. And it's one of the things I talk about in the book. Very long story short, I totally flopped in this punt return drill or punt return audition. And
Which is kind of your deal.
I knew I was going to have to be a special teams guy, probably a return guy in order to make the team, right? I wasn't going to be a starting receiver on a team with T.O. and J.J. Stokes and Ty Streets and all these guys. And, I mean, I blew it big. Like, a ball hit me in the face. I'm trying to catch a punt. It hits me in the face. I mean, just bad. And it was the last thing we were doing in practice that day, and so I was kind of walking into the locker room, and the receivers coach, this guy named George Stewart, came up and he kind of put his arm around me, and Stu had a real particular way of communicating, and he just said, "What are you thinking? What's going through your head?" And I was like, "Fuck, I just blew it, And he was like, "You didn't blow it." He goes, "But I need you to understand something." He said, "Did you practice catching punts before you came to minicamp or when you were getting ready for the draft?" And I said, "Well, no, not really, And I made up all these excuses, which were legitimate, but they were still excuses, right? It was in Montana, no indoor facility. It's 10 degrees outside, ice and snow, and all this stuff, right? And he stopped me and he said, "Well, look, here's what you got to understand. You were a great player in college, an All-American. We signed you So we thought you were good enough to get here. And then he said, but I want you to know that what got you here won't keep you here, won't help you have a career here. He said, so if you want to stay here, so you got invited to camp, we signed you to a contract, you got your little signing bonus, whatever. You want to have a career here? You got to take everything to another level. You're not an amateur anymore, is what he said. You're not in college anymore. You're not an amateur. You're a professional now. Quote unquote, motherfuckers get paid a lot of money to do this up here. So if you want to be here, you got to learn how to be a pro. That's where that phrase, that title of the book and all that comes from. And so that became kind of a little saying that we would say seriously and joking sometimes, right? This idea of being a pro, like, got to be better, got to be your best. And so when I wrote the book, the concept of your blueprint to professional level achievement was to say that regardless of where you are right now, this idea of continuous growth and improvement, expanding your knowledge, expanding your understanding of yourself, what it is that you do, what are the appropriate skill sets, expanding your knowledge of the world around you, the way business works, whatever it might be, right? Whatever you currently know isn't going to be enough to get you where you're trying to go. So it's that idea that here's a blueprint that you can use to get started. And the mindset needs to be that wherever I'm at, whatever I know, I got to continue to get better. And the opening page of this book has a quote from Jim Rohn, who some of the younger people might not know of. Yeah, Jim Rohn was I think he's kind of like the father of personal development, right? In the 70s and 80s. And
he was Tony Robbins'
mentor. Jim Rohn used to say, if you want things to get better, you have to get better. If you want things to change, you have to change. And so I've kind of taken that on as a kind of a motto or a mantra for my life. If I want things to change, if I want anything to get better, if I want to make more money, if I want to have better relationships, if I want to be a better son, husband, father, whatever, I can't depend on or put that on other people to change. And, you know, a lot of people say, well, man, if this just would have happened, or if this person would do this, or if coach would have given me more playing time or given me a chance. It's all stuff outside of your control. The one thing I can control is what I'm doing, how I can improve, how I can change. So if anything in my life that I can look at and say, I want this to be better, I got to look and say, okay, I got to be better. How can I get better? If I want to make more money, I got to be a better speaker. I got to write better books. I got to be a better coach. So that's the kind of the concept of that in a nutshell. Be a pro. Like, what's the best version of you that you can create? And the process in doing that is you being a pro. And the book lays out a blueprint that you can use to get started that ultimately you have to then own and make your own.
Yeah.
Because my path isn't going to be your path. And what I did might not work for you. But here's what I did. Take what works, discard what doesn't, make it your own. But just know that you're going to have to continuously grow, improve, and get better.
I love it. I love it. The three, and the other thing that I want to ask you about is, because I love all three of these words, is prepared, reliable, and obsessed. Yeah. You know, to me, in anything, if I ever have a bad session or if I have a bad podcast, which I haven't done many of them yet, but usually the ones that aren't as good, I'm less prepared. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's like somebody I know really well, so I just thought I'm just going to rip it.
Right.
You know what I mean? But I don't do a very great job of, you know what I mean? Or, you know, the number one trait that I feel like I look at with almost all of my coaches or anybody that I trust or anything, or anybody, if I look at like some of my best friends, it's reliable. You know what I mean? And then the most successful people I've ever been around are obsessed. Right. And so I loved, seeing those three words to me were huge. You know what I mean? So what does, you know, your preparation look like these days for the things that you're doing? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What things do you feel like that you're doing or that you see in other people that make them more reliable? And then what are you obsessed with right now?
Yeah, I love that. So first of all, I love that you recognize that. And again, that's why I like spending time with people like yourself, because so many people would push back. I get it a lot of times in training seminars and things that I'm doing with people about, particularly about that word obsessed. it's got such a negative connotation, right? But you said what I've said for years, which is look at anybody that's achieved at a really high level. They will tell you there was a level of obsession around some part of what they were doing. And average people, sometimes I hate the derogatory context of that word, but people that are fine with mediocrity or average, they don't resonate with that concept of obsession.
Sorry to interrupt. I've been noticing, because I have friends or family members that I think are I don't even think that are average. I feel like your environment when you're younger and we found something to be obsessed with. Sometimes I feel like some people haven't ever figured that out.
Yeah,
they haven't figured out their why or what they're. And now obviously you could put an effort into going to get that. But when you figure out what you love, then I think you do become obsessed with it. And I'm trying to show kids that, because we have kids that are not going to play at the collegiate level or not play professional. But I want them to find something, because they're great communicators. They're unreal people.
Yes.
They treat others good. I'm like, this guy's going to be awesome. And they're like, I don't know what I want to do, which I get it at a young age or not. But if you can find something that you love, you know what I mean, and you become obsessed with it, you'll absolutely you'll be a savage.
Couldn't agree more.
Dominate it.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And I think a lot of times, and again, probably another conversation. I think most of the time we know what it is that we love. Society in some type of way has told us that that's not something that's going to be profitable. You can't make a living doing that. You know what? How many people told you were nuts when you started this whole thing?
Yeah, a lot of people.
You know what I mean? Really, Taylor? You're gonna make your life being a personal trainer or whatever. It's like they don't get it. You stayed the course and figured out a way to make this a very successful living, not just financially, but success in the terms that you get to be impactful. I always talk about the difference between chasing success and chasing significance. Success is what you can get. Significance is what you can give. And usually significance leads to the stuff you want. If you become very significant and impactful in the world or in the lives of others, usually success will follow. So I think people usually know what they love. They know what that is. What they're trying to work out is what I love something I can make a living doing? And a lot of kids probably think they can't, because we tell them what's a good thing to love and what's not, right? A lot of kids love video games, passionate about video games. Not my cup of tea. There's people that are making great livings doing that. As an example, it's not something I would encourage, but so I think you always know. But I do want to answer your original question. Those three words, preparation, reliability, and obsession, to me are pillars of high performance. Most people probably have some version of those things that they think these are the most important things, and this is just my version of it. But I had a coach years ago, they always used to say, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. So being prepared is that idea of being ready for the opportunity. Maybe the opportunity comes, maybe it doesn't. But preparation is, what are you doing? Everybody works hard. Everybody's grinding, at the top levels. So that's the prerequisite. So hard work and these type of things don't get it done, or isn't the only thing that's going to get it done. Preparation is things like, do you have a clear plan or purpose for what you're getting prepared for, why you're doing it? There's a lot of people working their ass off at the wrong things. Or for instance, if you got a chemistry test coming up and you studied your ass off for algebra, worked hard, studied your ass off, but it was for the wrong thing. So it's like preparation to me, the way I do that now is, what's my end goal? What am I getting prepared for? It's kind of that 7 habits, begin with the end in mind. Like, what am I trying to accomplish here? Knowing that informs my preparation. Reliability, I think, is really important, because reliability speaks to not just showing up, but how you show up. A lot of people use the words dependable and reliable interchangeably, and they're not the same. Reliability adds the component of showing up and performing well. Right? Dependable people show up all day. Count on a guy to show up. Oh, he'll be here. Sometimes they're they're here, but they give you half-ass effort. They're not locked in. They're not ready to go, whatever the case may be. Reliable people is like, no, we know we can count on him, and he's going to give us 100% effort.
Yep.
Knock it out of the park. To me, that's the difference, right? That's the difference between being average and being a professional, right? You look at some of the guys you've worked with. Not only did they show up every day, but they showed up and laid it all out there. And there's other people that probably show up here every day and go through the motions. Dependable, you know they'll be here every morning at 7. Don't know exactly what you're going to get out of them, right? So reliability comes down to like trust, and I know I can get the most out of you. An obsession to me in my context is what are the traits that obsessive people exhibit? It's like a curiosity, never stop learning, always digging for more information, right? Those are some of those traits. How does that apply in practice? I listened to Tom Brady do an interview with Tony Romo before the Bucs and Chiefs played in the Super Bowl a couple years ago, and Romo said, Tom, why are you still playing? You know, you've been doing this for 20-some years, 6 Super Bowls. Like, what are we doing here? You know, do you just love football that much? Tom said, yeah, I love football. You know, I love the locker room and the team and all this. But he said, I think for me, what keeps me going and what gets me out of bed is I have this obsession, almost a sickness with throwing the perfect spiral, throwing the perfect ball, coming off my hand just right, the perfect ball placement. He said, you know, I'll throw a ball and somebody will say, wow, that was a great throw. And he said, I'm thinking, you know, it was 6 inches too far to the right. If I could get it right over on his face mask, you know. And he said, I have that obsession with throwing the perfect spiral and the perfect ball. He said, I think that's what gets me out of bed, and all the championships and all that is a byproduct of me wanting to indulge that obsession, essentially. And so for me, it's like what I always ask people say, well, how can I be more obsessed? I say, well, what's your, and I'll tell them that story. And I say, what's your perfect spiral? Like, what is it for you? If you're a realtor or a loan officer or a, you know, whatever, it's not enough just to say, oh, I love real estate, I love houses. If we dig deep enough, there's something deeper under the surface that's like, you know what I really love is when I get to the closing table with a newlywed couple that's just had their first child and they just bought their first home and now they're going to build their wealth. And so obsession is what is the, you know, what's the perfect spiral? What is it for you? Like Steve Jobs was not obsessed with like cell phones. He had a different obsession around making the world more accessible to people through their devices, you know, whatever it might have been. But he wasn't obsessed with computers and cell phones. There's something deeper there that gets you up every morning to do that thing. I would assume your obsessions are not, I just want to make kids faster, stronger, whatever. It's like, that's part of it. But your joy is probably seeing, you know, I'm speaking for you, but just as an example, probably seeing these kids grow from where they were and then go on to achieve what they want to achieve partly because of what they did while they were in your facility, right? That's what gets you out of bed. It's not coming in here to tell kids to, you know, start this way and, you know, do these things.
I think it's two things for me. I think it's looking at it. I think the number one thing I'm obsessed with is growth. And I think it actually comes from a fear of being being in the same spot that I was this year. Mm-hmm. That's with growth of the company. That's with growth of my staff, growth with myself, my kids, my when I say my kids, like my actual children and my wife and my family, like as far as are we in the same spot financially we were a month ago? You know what I mean? And then with my kids, the athletes that we work with, same exact thing. Like, are we actually helping them grow physically and mentally? You know what I mean? But I think it's because of fear of being in the same spot.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly where that comes from, but I hate it. Like, to me, I mean, the old cliche, if you're not growing, you're dying. Like, I mean, that's a statement. That never was a heavy hitter for me, but it's like if we're just like doing this, I can feel less energy, less intensity out of my guys, out of my staff, my family. You know what I mean? All these little things. It's like, so to me, it's like, oh, I have to go get this other building, or I have to go do this, or we need to get this team, or we need to get, okay, we couldn't figure this hamstring out. We have to figure this out. We have to get this guy better. Otherwise, we're in the same spot we were before.
Right.
If we're not growing, it's when I say I'll joke about with the guys, like, I'm getting the shakes, and I know it's because my guys are the same way. They want to go do this, and if I'm not doing that, which happens, like, it's not like I'm growing all the time, and so it's but I think my obsession is more about a fear of standing still, you know, which, you know, my wife will say that's not a good thing because she wants me to stand still sometimes, you know what I mean? But if you see our kids too, they never stand still. But
you know,
that's my biggest obsession.
The question to that, and I say this sarcastically, is when's it going to be enough, Taylor? When's it gonna, you know?
I don't think.
Come on,
but I love it though.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That was the point that I was getting at. It's like, why does it have to be? Yeah. Why does it ever have to be enough? Right? You're in a space.
I think sports teaches that.
It does, and you know, I wrestled with this, and I had a mentor some years ago that helped me define it, and maybe this will be helpful to you. I wrestled. I was in the NFL. You know, came from a small town in North Idaho, Lewiston. You know, I won't tell the story, but the underdog that
we have a few that in there.
Yeah, you know, undrafted, all these type of things. So I was really happy just to be there. You know, I'd look around sometimes and be like, shit, you know, I'm in the NFL. But then I struggled with, I don't want to just be happy to be here. Like, you know, just being happy to be here, that's not a good mindset. So then I'd find myself upset because I'm like, man, I should be starting. I should be doing this. Why can't I get these opportunities, right? So then I felt ungrateful. And I really struggled with the idea of being somewhere that I'd always dreamed of being and that not being enough. And I was explaining that to this guy that I was working with some years after I retired, and he said, let me explain that to you. He said, that's what's called being happily dissatisfied. And when he said that, it just, like, this light went off in my head, and he said, happy and grateful for where you are. Very grateful, thankful for what you currently have, knowing what it took you to get here and to build it, and still wanting more, wanting to grow, improve, evolve, expand. And that, just defining it that way, gave me the permission to continue to press forward and say, no, I want more, and I want to be better, and I want to grow, and I want to continue to move forward, not because I'm ungrateful or always feel like I'm in lack, or because I've got some hole in my heart to fill that enough is never enough. It's because, for me, maxing out my potential and accomplishing everything I can possibly accomplish, that's what makes me feel alive. And if I'm not doing that, like you said, I'm essentially dying. There's no staying the same, you know. And I think that's I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's when you say that, that's what I hear is like, oh, he's happily dissatisfied, very happy with where you're at.
Yeah.
Could stay here if that was what was required and be fine. But you're going to be on your deathbed and feel like you shortchanged yourself if you stopped now.
Yeah. No, I think the hard part is being okay with it, you know, to where it doesn't create anxiety. Let it create urgency, you know what I mean? But not a anxiety that's bad, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's just those times where it's almost too much, to where if I'm treating somebody bad or something because I'm putting my shit out on them,
right.
You know what I mean? To where it's like, okay, we are good, we need to get here, but it's like, if that doesn't happen, do I die tomorrow? You know
right.
what I mean? And which is hard for me to say out loud too, because it's always been like, there's no plan B. So, but just figuring out that balance, you know what I mean? But I don't think I'd have it any other way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I would want to, you know, I want to teach my kids that. You know, I hope they have competitiveness. I hope they can be happy, because I am happy. You know what I mean? I have a great life. You know what I mean? And I want them to do that. But I want them to be competitive. I want them to want to be the best that they can possibly be.
Let me ask you this. Do you feel like, because you mentioned couple times being motivated by that fear of whatever, some of the things you explained was that essentially fear of failure, like, man, what if I lose it all and I can't take care of my family and all these type of things. What do you think you're motivated by now versus what you were motivated by 10 years ago? Is it the same? Has it changed?
Completely different. Then 100% fear of what others thought. Which I, hate that was how it was, but it was being an athlete and not being that great. I was always seen as the try-hard,
Right.
As the practice hero guy, and it was the only way I knew that to where even I had a chance to be on the field. And so it's like I had to do that, you know what I mean? And then, going into business and going to do something that was different than anybody else that was doing too, it's like, was I going to be able to do it? In the grand scheme, nobody even cared. It's more I thought that people were caring and thinking about it. Nobody gave a shit about what I was doing. And I talked about that a bunch, but that was like the fear then. Now I see some. I hate to play like the comparing game, but you see some guys, and whether it's the social media game or people that you meet and how successful they are, and it's like, if I don't get to that point, it's because I didn't take the right actions to get there.
Right.
I have the ability to be there.
Right.
So my fear would be to where, when I'm dying, and I'm not where I wanted to be, and I have to live with that because it was 100% my own actions and not because of somebody else's, or not because of things didn't go my way. It's because I didn't take action on it.
Yeah.
And that's what I would say my fear is now. And I think the basis now is like, what can I give and provide for my family, and how great can I make this company?
Right.
That's what I care about now. And before it was, okay, I got to go make a lot of money. I got to be the best strength coach in the world to make up for the athletes because my friends are making money. I got to make more than them. I got to do that. And again, nobody cares.
Right.
and I thought people cared.
Yeah.
So those are the two differences now, I think.
I love that because, one of the things that I end up talking to a lot of my clients and people that I work with are, what roughly we could define as away from motivation and towards motivation. And concepts I know you're familiar with. But a lot of people will say, you say, well, what do you, what's the motivation? Like, what are you trying to do? And they'll say, well, man, I just don't want to be broke. Or, they had a bad childhood and they'll talk about being a father. Say, man, I just don't want to be like my dad. I had an example of what I don't want to be like. Mm-hmm. People can get really clear about what they don't want in their life. And that can be a powerful motivation. I certainly used that. When I was young, my motivation to get to college and make it to the league was partly because I wanted those things, but I also had this chip on my shoulder, like, I'm going to prove these people wrong that think that I can't do it. So I was constantly trying to prove people wrong, and that really motivated me.
Sorry to interrupt again. How many people really cared or thought that you couldn't do it?
Well,
or think that we could. Like, I feel like we make them
sure.
up in our head.
Yeah, which
so many people think that we can't do it. Nobody even cares.
Yeah, I totally agree.
You know what I mean?
And part of that was maybe a strategy I was using to invent some of that.
Yeah.
But there was, let's just say there was 5 people over the course of like high school and college that were like, he's not going to do it. Yeah. He's going to go to Montana and probably sit on the bench. And then if they'd hear that I said, yeah, I'm going to the league, they'd say, right, this guy's not going to the league, So I took that and was like, okay, everybody thinks I'm not going to make it, which again, those are those mind games we can play that can be powerful for us. But the other side of motivation, that's the away from, like, I'm pushing away from something that I don't want. The other side is moving towards something compelling that you want. And I got to this point in my career, 3-4 years into my NFL career, and I was like, I made it. And so I can't say that I'm trying to prove people wrong anymore because there's nobody left, right? There's nobody left to prove wrong in that respect. And so what's motivating me now? And I realize that I just want to max it out and see how many years I can play in the league, how good I can be, kind of touch the ceiling of what my potential is. And so I really appreciated what you said when you as you kind of finished that, like, the goal now is, I still look at what other people are doing just kind of as a metric to say, oh, I could maybe do this a little bit better, or this is a place where I want to get. But at the end of the day, regardless of what anybody else is doing, what's the greatest company that I can create? What's the greatest life for me and my wife and my kids that I can build? No competition, no comparison. What's the most I'm capable of? And I say that because I wish so many younger people, and you have much more experience with this than I because you work with them every day, but getting that idea through to them to say, stop all the comparison and just settle on what's the best that you can do. What's the best you can create? How fast can you be? How strong can you be? What's the greatest high school career you can have, and let that speak for itself.
Yep.
What are the greatest relationships you can create as you get older and move forward, and the best business that you can build? It doesn't have to be Apple. It doesn't have to be Instagram. Build a company or a business that you love and that you enjoy, and let that be as great as it can be, and that's it.
Yeah.
And so when you started talking about that, it kind of triggered that in me. I love to talk to people about kind of their evolution of what motivates, because it has to change. It has to. People that hold on to one form of, all fear-based motivation versus, no, now I'm more of a love and abundance, where it's like, there's plenty for everybody, man, and I'm good, and I'm going to get mine as long as I continue to pursue what serves me.
Yep.
And the compelling future that I have for me, my wife, my kids, my business, my employees. What anybody else is doing, not my business. It's such a much more peaceful, fulfilled place to be.
Yeah. And it's a familiar theme on this podcast so far. I feel like I might have talked about it on every one, but it's, can I close that gap? So I think that our experience has helped us realize that. And so now that the fact that I've been able to see it, and now that I have so many young athletes and lives that that look up to me and see me as an outside voice, and my whole staff and our whole company, it's like, how can I get them to realize that faster? Like starting with the hater thing. All these kids will like post like these haters that or these this, and it turns them into where they start throwing other people under the bus.
Yeah.
Anytime I see a kid make fun of somebody, it's because of their own insecurities.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And it's not usually that kid's not a bad kid. He's coming from a different something triggered him to, okay, now I got to put this kid down. To where if I can get them to, eliminate that or recognize that if I'm doing that, it's probably because I think that guy's better than me, or I'm insecure about myself. You know what I mean? And then when you do realize to be able to put your best foot forward all the time, to be your best and to make others better, how much faster you can grow, because that's what they want to see when you're young. We want to see when we're young. So my goal is it took me until probably I had kids, maybe until I lost my partner in my business, to realize those things. And I want my high school kids to, what if they can realize that as they're going into college, or what if they can realize that while they're in high school? Because we have a few kids that are literally unbelievable kids, and then you look at the opportunities that they're creating, and it's because of how they treat others, and it's because they don't play the comparison game. And then other kids have so much upside, and they're so worried about what everybody else is doing.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that's a huge message and goal of mine with these kids that I'm recognizing and realizing. And it's like, I understand it, I was there, but I don't want you to realize it when you're 28. What if you realize it when you're 18,
man,
or 19?
Yes,
you know what I mean. And so that's the goal. Or when it hits them in their head, they're like, "Oh, T was on my ass about that."
Yeah, and they get it, and maybe maybe that's just all part of their growth and evolution. And if we were able to implant that in them when we wish they got it, maybe in doing so, we would keep them from learning a lot of lessons and everything that they need to go through and learn. That's always the hard thing for me. I mean, I went through that. I don't have kids, but I went through that with my nephews. I was just like, I just wanted to like telepathically implant in their head certain things at a certain time, and it was like, they that's not where they were at the time mentally, and so they'll figure that out when they're ready for that. But I do think the desire from your end to want that for them is maybe one of the things that sparks the curiosity in them to slowly kind of piece together what it is that you were actually talking about. And then when it clicks, they're like, got it. And now they'll never forget it and move forward from that point. So that's one of the things that I respect about you so much and applaud you and what you do here for, because it's, helping a kid have a great high school career, maybe get into college and all that. I mean, that's fantastic in and of itself. But it's the other piece that, 10 years later, there's still guys that come back here to train with you because they respect you and because of what you've helped them become. And I think to me, that's the real trophy for you.
Love it. Jerry, gotta pause.
No.
I don't know what's going on. Sorry, Jerry. I don't have anything in my mouth. So where we're at on that. I'll pause that. Sorry about that, Jim. So something when I bring my coaches in and when we start coaching and when they start kind of getting a feel, at the beginning it's all the technical side of things. But then I start talking about what type of influence that you have to have. So a question I ask them is like, what coach had the best influence on you when you were younger? Because everybody that we had was an athlete. And what one, maybe had the worst influence on you or you learned the most from that I don't want to be like that? And what traits are you realizing yourself that you're doing, that you learned from them? And can you hone in on those?
Yeah.
And what things would you do differently? So for me, the one big one was Matt Rasmussen. He was my baseball coach for 4.5 years, and a huge mentor of mine. And he just held us to the highest standard. We won 2 games our freshman year because we were on varsity. It's a brand new school, and we were terrible. But he never let us believe that in everything we did, in and out, how we ran in and out, how we dressed, the way we wore our shoes, everything, like that standard to me. And then he never let up. Like it was every single day. Like he never had an off day with that. And to me, that was a huge influence on me. You know what I mean? And thinking about that was some of my kids, and that's just one coach, for example. What is a coach that left a huge influence on you, and what have you took from them that you still use today in coaching? Yeah.
So potentially a long answer here. My high school coach, Nick Menegas at Lewiston High School, without him, I don't have a career. Probably can't quantify or number the things that he did for me, taught me. What stands out are 2 things. Number one, the self-belief aspect. He believed in me so much and almost required me to increase my level of belief in myself. And the way he always described that was, he didn't use these words, but this is how I define it, is by gathering evidence. So he was a guy that said, hey, every time you get a workout in, like, that should increase your self-belief, that you're doing everything it takes to be who you want to be. He kind of taught me that concept of who you need to be versus what you need to do. Most people, they start with, well, what do I need to do? It's like, man, I want to, this is my goal, blah, blah, blah. What should I do? People come to you all the time. Kids will say, what do I need to do to increase my speed or to be a varsity starter? And he said, essentially, the question is, who do you need to be? Because I can tell you all the things to do, but if you're not disciplined, committed, obsessed, whatever the word you want to use is, you may not do those things, or you may do them half-assed and just say, well, I did what you said, but you didn't do it at a certain level, so you're not going to get the result, right? So he always talked about who you need to be. And he also taught me this concept I didn't understand at the time, but he always had me thinking about the next level. So I'd watch film with him. He would say, hey, this right here works for us. Like this will be fine for us and what we're trying to accomplish. I know you want to go play in college next year. That won't get it done in the eyes of a college recruiter or a college coach. So we got to start doing stuff with a different mindset, a different level. So it got me thinking, like, what's the level I'm trying to get to, and let me operate as if I'm that guy now. So when I was in high school, I was training and practicing and doing drills as if I was already in college. That was my mindset. So, like I said, I can't quantify Nick Menegus's effect on me, but I would say he created that self-belief in me, and then he got me thinking on the level where I wanted to be versus where I was. The second guy, there are two guys, and I kind of lump them into one. But when I was at Montana, I had an offensive coordinator named Brent Pease, who was here with Boise State for a number of years, and a receiver coach named Billy Cockhill. And I'll just say that I hated them both. I hated them. I thought they were just the biggest dickheads. Truly, they yelled, MF'd everybody. It was just not enjoyable. It wasn't pleasant. It was a stark contrast from what I'd come from in high school, right? And so I spent my first 3-4 years at Montana just hating these guys. I was just miserable. When I got to the NFL, my offensive coordinator, this guy named Greg Knapp, came up to me after OTAs. So this would have been June of my rookie year. So we'd been there for maybe 5 or 6 weeks and had a number of practices. And he just casually one day said to me, he said, when's the last time you talked to your coaches at Montana? And I said, I don't know, a couple months ago or whatever. And he said, next time you talk to them, you should thank them. And I said, why? What for what? And he said, your level of skill on the small, simple things, the basic stuff, he said is exceptional. I don't know if he used those words, but this is what he was saying. He said, you are really skilled and do all the little things right. And I was like, thank you. That was a great compliment. Again, I'm a rookie, undrafted, trying to make the team. And I thought about that for a while, and I was like, fucking Cockhill and Pease. Those two guys were on my ass about every little detail. Couldn't do anything right in their eyes. Make a big catch and convert on third down, and the coaching, the feedback was, catch the fucking ball with your hands. Why are you body catching this? And I'm a 20-year-old thinking like, what do you mean? I just made a big catch and converted a 3rd and 15. Like, can't you just say nice play, good play, Jim? But they were on my ass about all this stuff. And so what that taught me, again, to answer your question, was the level of attention to detail that it takes to be elite. And so when I think about those two guys, or specifically 3 guys, it was that self-belief, thinking on the next level, and then the true attention to detail that it takes to get to the elite levels. And then last, quickly, George Stewart, I already referenced him. He was a coach that taught me that something that I really believe in now, which is the idea that in order to get the most out of people, everybody believes in that golden rule, what they call the golden rule. Treat others the way you want to be treated. To me, it falls short of the platinum rule, which is treat others the way they want to be treated. What that means is you might be motivated differently than me. One guy, you can chew his ass and he'll say, yes, sir, got it, and go get it. Another guy, you chew his ass and he goes in the tank and you lose him. Now you take a great player who's mentally broken and you don't get anything out of him. Mm-hmm. The best coaches, the best leaders in the world figure out what every individual that's meaningful to them, what that person needs, and they treat them according to that. Not my way or the highway, not this is the way we do things, you either fall in line or you don't. If your job is to get the most out of your people, figure out who they are and treat them the way they want to be treated. It's similar to like love languages. If you found out that your wife really was a words of affirmation person and really needed to hear, baby, you're great, I love you, you're awesome, you're amazing. That wasn't your love language, right? And so if you were treating her the way you wanted to be treated, you'd never tell her those things because that's not your love language. Right. But if you want a meaningful relationship with her, what are you going to do? You're going to meet her where she needs it. Yeah. So those three individuals or groups of people have truly shaped the way I try to think, act, and operate in the world as an adult, in my personal life and in my professional life, as it pertains to my clients and the programs that I do within companies. It's all based around some version or some form of those things. And I guess lastly, the thing that I don't resonate with is that my way or the highway, and I had coaches like that. I had a guy in New England named Charlie Weiss, and Bill Belichick. Truthfully, I'll even say, like, Bill's a great coach, obviously. Bill didn't care what you thought, what you felt, what you wanted, what was important to you. Didn't care. He knew what was important to him, what he wanted, where he wanted to take the team, what he felt was necessary, and he was going to talk to you the way he was going to talk to you, coach you the way he was going to coach you. If you couldn't take it, too bad. And they have obviously had a lot of success doing that. Personally, for me, my philosophy couldn't be further from that. And so, yeah, as much as I learned under Bill Belichick and under that system, I don't. Very little of that do I retain and use in my It's just not the way I choose to go about things at all.
Right. And I've had a few coaches like that, definitely not on a Bill Belichick level, probably the best coach of all time, him and Phil. But the standard that they come across, you know what I mean? The standards that they hold to themselves to, I try to take that from them.
Sure.
Because they know, especially with that many egos in an NFL locker room / coaching room / front office, they have to hold everybody to their standard, and again, it has to be black and white. Can't have a gray day.
Very
can't
true.
Have an off day. You know what I mean?
Very true.
And so I understand where they're coming from. Are there other ways to do it? Probably, but I get why they're doing that. You know what I mean? So I try to think like,
yeah,
we talk about in front of our kids. The kids come here, and it's on their calendar. It's a Tuesday, Thursday night at 6:30. They come here. We have emotional days, personal problems. We don't feel great. We, didn't sleep, whatever it is. But like, we can't have a bad day in front of these kids because they only have so many days with us. You know what I mean? And so we have to be at the same level all the time. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So it's a.
You know what that's called? Compartmentalization. It's a key. It's a trait of every super high performer. Because in these fields, the highest levels of sports and business and leadership, you have to be able to compartmentalize emotions. And that's the macro all the way down to the micro. People always say, man, what made Tom Brady so great? I mean, it's a handful of things, but his ability to compartmentalize. Throw a pick six in the Super Bowl, boom, done, shut the door on it, coming back out the next drive, we're going to go down the field and score. What happened last drive doesn't affect this drive. Maybe you see, Kobe Bryant years and years ago was going through that assault trial in Colorado during the NBA Finals. Sitting in a courtroom all day in Colorado, gets on a private jet, flies to LA or Utah or whatever, gets there just in time to suit up for the game and goes and puts up 30 in an NBA game. He was able to build a wall between what was happening in his personal life and what he needed to do professionally for his job. And those are extreme examples, but you may be in that respect what's called an unconscious competent. Like you're obviously conscious of that you're able to do that, but maybe not sure why or whatever. It's an expectation or a standard for you. Dude, that's every high-level performer has the ability to compartmentalize their emotions. When I need to lock in this compartment, which is here with the kids, you do it. And we'll revisit stuff that's going on at home or in the personal life or my emotional day. When this is finished, then I'll go back into that compartment and deal with it then. But while I'm here, while I got a job to do, while I'm locked in, this is what I'm locked in on. And I say that because that's one thing. If I could teach, kids, teenagers and young people one lesson, it would be that.
Yeah.
It would be that like we cannot have so much crossover or, whatever you want to call it, bleed through of the personal and the, because it becomes a thing that separates people as they get older.
Yeah.
You know, as they progress in life and they start working for companies and things like that. Like, you come to work too many days saying, yeah, I'm not there today because they're going to fire you. So if we can start to learn that now, that whatever's going on with my girlfriend and I, or whatever somebody said about me on Instagram, that's over here. But while I'm here, I need to be locked in on this.
Yeah.
That's a skill that produces champions and elite performers later in life, for sure.
100%. Never thought of it like that. I wanted to ask about Montana. So back then, social media wasn't a thing, and Montana wasn't a Division I or an FBS school, right?
Right.
Little bit of a smaller school. I think it's unbelievable. You know what I mean? But I think social media has made it now in our area. If you don't go to Boise State or University of Washington, which kids think they should go to just play the national championship, you're a failure. You know what I mean? I'm not going to go to U of I or Idaho State or College of Idaho or a school like that. You know, what was your mindset about Montana? I mean, you were from a small town. I'm assuming then you thought Montana was awesome, which I still. I mean, they've only grown. You know what I mean? Which is unbelievable, but. What was your thought process on, you know, going to a little bit of a smaller school, still having the ability to go to the league, and then what was like an experience that you took away from there that you enjoyed? Like, I went to the College of Idaho, which was, I wanted to always leave the state, but it was the best place I could go play at, and I loved it. Like, my best friends, my guys that were at my wedding, everybody that was there, I absolutely loved the experience there. I wouldn't trade it for the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, what was your mindset going into Montana? And I mean, did you think that it was under where you were at? I mean, did you think, I should have been going to Boise State or should have been going to somewhere like this? Or
Well, so at the time, if you remember,
was Boise State in the Big Sky?
Exactly. So my senior year of high school, Boise State, Idaho, and Montana were all still in the Big Sky.
Gotcha.
And so those were basically my top three.
Cool.
Right? Boise State in 96. So after that 95 season, which was my senior year of high school, going into the spring of 96, which was my graduating year, Boise State and Idaho left to go to Division I, and it was actually the conference was called the Big West.
Oh, okay.
way back before they went to the WAC and did all that stuff. And so, but I was recruited by all three of them lightly. It ended up that Montana offered me first, and probably would have been the only school that offered me. And so Montana had just won the 1AA national championship. They smoked Boise State that year at Montana, like 55-10, or so. I mean, just put a beating on them. And so there wasn't this idea that Boise State was a bigger, better place to be than Montana, because Montana just won the 1AA national championship, and so there wasn't that dynamic. But, you know, to the bigger part of your question, I was happy as could be to be at Montana because, dude, when I was in high school, I was slow most of my high school career. I mean, I think my senior year in the state track meet in the 100 meters, I ran like 11:1 something, you know, on that electronic timer. I ended up running like a 4:48:40, you know, my head coach hand time 4:48:40, which probably was more like a 4:5 something, honestly. So I wasn't a Pac-10 guy. You know, I wasn't a Washington State or a University of Washington or Oregon type guy. Sure, I would have loved to have gone to those places, but for me in Montana, I was like, shit, this is high level Big Sky football. I grew up watching the Vandals and watching some of those matchups. So it was a great place to be. But moving forward, here's the thing. This is what I wish kids understood. My experience at Montana was that I basically ended up starting for 4 years. So I played a lot of football. I caught a lot of footballs. I caught more in the 4-game playoffs my senior year, more balls, more yards, and more touchdowns, okay? Then a guy, when I got to the 49ers, we had drafted a 6th-round draft pick out of Tennessee. I won't say his name. Awesome guy, love him. I had more catches in a 4-game stretch in the playoffs than he had his entire season in the SEC. So, yeah, he came from the SEC. He was a draft pick. I came from the Big Sky. I was undrafted. If you stacked up the amount of games that I played, the amount of balls that I caught, and the experience that I had just playing football versus what he had, I was night and day better. And that was the point that Greg Knapp was making when he said that to me. Your skill level and just your feel and everything you do is exceptional. So my point is to some of these younger kids that struggle with this stuff, you can go to Washington. If you're not, a 4-star and you're not going to go in and start within a year or two, it's not a bad choice to go to Montana. I won't say the name, but the other school in Montana, because I know a lot of kids go there. Great program, quite honestly. Still a little brother to the Grizz, but those guys are putting people out. The other school in Montana had a second-round draft pick a couple years ago. Yeah. A kid named Troy Anderson that's starting for the Falcons. I got to the league out of Montana way back then.
Didn't Montana beat UW a couple years ago?
Went to UW and beat them at UW.
Yeah.
Right? So what matters is how much football you can play in those 4 years.
Go where you can play.
Go where you can play.
And you'll love it.
And so to answer your final question, dude, my experience from going to University of Montana, best 5 years of my life. I was a part of a program that was exceptional. We were every year ranked in the top 5 in the country. I was a part of 2 national championship games. We lost them both, but played in 2 national championships. Was in a city that was, I always called it a mini SEC. You know, Missoula, Montana is right there with Athens. Some of these SEC type towns. You know, per capita, Missoula, Montana is a nuts, crazy sports town. If you're a stud in Montana athletics, like you're the mayor of the town.
Yeah. Best
college experience you can have. So some of these guys that are like fringe, Boise State or Pac-12 guys, go to Montana, go to a Big Sky, light it up, start for 4 years. There's a kid here.
Even to do that is not easy. And you know what I mean?
Exactly.
That's where it's
it's not like that's necessarily easy.
No, not at all. That's where my goal is to help everybody. I want them to achieve their dreams, but you know what I mean? But then I'm not going to play at UW, so I'm just going to go to school. It's like, I just don't want kids to regret it. You know what I mean? We have a lot of kids that actually, they make the right choice. They understand that, hey, my time's done and I get it. But then it's so many come back a year later and like, hey, yeah, maybe I will go to the College of Idaho. Maybe I will, try to go to Idaho State.
Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? Like, and even like, let's even talk about C of I. I'll put in a little plug for them. Fantastic program. Top to bottom. High level of football. Like, if you want to play,
my left tackle's going to get paid.
Bro, it's a very high level, yes, NAIA, call that what you want, high level of football. If you want to continue to play football and have a great experience and enjoy winning and make memories, like, that's a fantastic place to go.
Yeah. And
truly.
The head coach, too,
he's fantastic.
He's a man.
I've got a nephew there right now, and I'm so happy that, yeah.
He's a dog.
Yeah. I mean, and at the end of the day, maybe he'll end up being a starter, one day, but he's going to graduate from there with a fantastic degree and say, hey, dude, I gave it everything I had. I maxed out my football career.
Works his ass off.
He does. And there's nothing, and he'll be 3 years old and say, there's nothing I regret.
Yep.
There's nothing I regret. And so that's one of the things I appreciate about so many of these programs is they give kids an opportunity to continue that dream and to make sure that they move forward with no regrets on what they wish they would have done.
Love it. Before we get off, you brought up Tony Robbins, which is really cool for me. So he's a giant mentor for me. And a lot of the young guys, like Cherry, didn't know much about him. And now a guy that he really looks up to brought him on his podcast. You know what I mean? And so then he could kind of relate. Like Tony to me was is probably one of the biggest mentors I've ever had, besides my dad and maybe Marlo, guy we had on the podcast. But I've learned so much from him. Never even met him. Took his courses, had one of his coaches on the phone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What are maybe two big things that stand out to you that you've took from him that you use to this day?
Oh.
I know there's so many.
Yeah.
Give me a couple.
Yeah. So
I got three in my head I'm going to throw out. I want to see if they're similar to yours.
Yeah. So one of the things that Tony, I think Tony has helped me understand. I got to figure out how to make this concise for our purposes. Tony says that we don't experience reality. We experience the reality we focus on.
What you focus on?
Right. And so it really, and I started, he started saying versions of that 10, 12 years ago when I listened to my first Tony Robbins CDs back then, the little CD pack that came in and got Awaken the Giant Within, the book, those books and stuff that he wrote. Yeah. I've got them all. Yeah. That I really struggle with that because, or struggle to understand that on a deep level. But now that I've just got more awareness about it, you hear people all the time say, "Oh, you create your reality," and it's come on. What you focus on, this is the way he describes it. What you focus on, you feel, number one, and what you focus on, you find. I choose, because of thinking through that concept that Tony introduced, I choose a life of extreme optimism. I'm going to focus on what's possible. I'm going to put a silver lining on everything. I'm going to find the good in everything, because the more I focus on that, the more of that shit I find.
Yep.
I'm going to believe that whatever the challenge I'm facing in front of me will work out the best possible way it could work out for me. I'm going to believe that every goal that I set, I'm going to achieve. I'm going to believe that whatever I want to accomplish, it's going to happen. I'm going to continue to believe that whatever scenario is unfolding in my life, it's going to work out the best way it possibly could for me.
Yep.
And that's because Tony said, what you focus on, you're going to find.
Yep.
And so I think, to me, that's kind of the foundational pillar of the Tony Robbins experience in my life, which is you have to control your focus and what you're going to focus on, because there's a lot of shit and darkness and pessimism that we can find. And there's times where you do that, you get in those mindsets where you're like, man, everything sucks. And guess what?
It does. Yeah. That goes back to the kids comparing
exactly.
And then the haters.
Exactly.
When the things that you focus on is where you're going to get.
Yes.
If you focus on what you can do, and it's so much easier said than done.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's way easier to focus on the negative things, because those are what's getting told to you. That's what pops up. That's what you see on social media. But
that's it.
If you can focus on, that I didn't have that as one of the things that Tony Robbins talks about.
I want to hear you. I'm interested to hear yours too. Yeah, please.
But what's he say? Where you focus, or
where
energy goes.
Where energy flow, focus goes where energy flows, or something like that. Yeah.
Mine is the raise your standards. So when I started,
turn shoulds into musts.
100% raise your standards hit me so hard, because
Mm-hmm.
it was. I always talk, my parents came from. My dad was my grandma kicked him out when he was 14. My dad was homeless when he was younger. My mom, same thing. She got shipped away from Minnesota when she was 12. And for them to be able to get me to go to a private school and do all these things was insane, and how hard they worked for it, and where they were at, that was insane to me. And my standard was, I was almost going in the same route they were, as far as at the same level of work. And then when he said that to me, it's how much they leveled up. I need to do the same.
Yes.
On top of that, which means I have to do so much. I'm not even close to coming out of something that they came out of.
Right.
You know what I mean? So to raise my standard, not to have it where it was at, because I'm an Idaho guy, because I'm not good at these different things, or because we don't have these athletes here. You know what I mean? That's what I was focusing on instead of raising my standards to where I should be the best in the country.
Period.
You know what I mean? And that was it. And
which, let me interrupt you just to say, not that you need this. I've said this to you before. Told this to my nephews, to my kid, to the any of your kids that I've talked to, you're right there. I say that with experience. I've worked with the top trainers, and what you do here out of Boise, Idaho, is right there with the top places in the country. You know, these places where guys go pay a bunch of money to get ready for the draft or whatever. If they came here, they'd be just as ready.
Appreciate that.
And I mean that. Like, and that's coming from just me to you, and not just a bullshit pacifier, whatever. Like, I've been in these places. I've worked with these people, these coaches that train these athletes. You're right there. So for the kids out there watching, you're working with one of the best. Trust me.
Appreciate that.
Yes. Sorry.
No, you're good. The second one to me, and it was like when I started listening to him, it's weird to me, like with faith and how all these things hit at the same time, is in bad times, you know, when I started listening to it. But serving and putting others first, like everything he does, it's like, how do I make others better? And that's helped his success. So to me, that was a huge, huge one that I got. And then I always hated the word balance, to where you were balanced in life. So his is life-work integration. So to me, it's like, do what you love, what you're obsessed with, which is super hard to find. And I am lucky to be able to do that. But to where it's my wife and my kids are involved with this. The guys that work here are my best friends. Like I show up to work in gym shorts and Jordans, and you know what I mean. And it's that life work integration. Like, you're not talking about how many hours you work anymore. Now it's more about, this is just life. You know what I mean. And those are the three biggest things that I've took from him. You know what I mean.
I work with a lot of high-level people in business that ask about balance because they hear that from other people, and that there should be this work-life balance. And to your point, the truth is there is none. And I don't even think it's a worthy pursuit because you won't find it. If you want to be, again, and I'm speaking always from the concept of, if you want to be great at what you do, if you want to be top levels, there's no balance. But let's just say, for sake of, to put a metric on it, it's 80-20. Let's say right now, it's 80% work and business, and then 20% wife and kids, personal life. What's important about that is that when you're in that 20% with the wife and the kids, that they get 100% of Taylor in that box of 20%. And that's how you balance that. Yep. And most people are okay with that. Your kids right now, if they get dad 100% locked in, full attention and focus for those hour or whatever they get a day, that's they're good with that.
Yeah.
You know?
And to be fair, that's what I love about my job. Like I'm not, like, that out is not enough for me. So
sure.
It's like, so like I said, me being lucky, I get to be with them. You know what I mean? As they grow older too, my wife's going to be working here, so I get to be with her. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I get to be with my kids. Like, I want my
beautiful.
kids to, you know what I mean? So it's
beautiful.
I think it's just, goes back to whatever you do. You know what I mean? Do it the right way. And
yeah.
Lucky with that. And that was the big thing for me, because I struggled with balance. You know what I mean? Lost relationships, did different
Absolutely.
things because there was no plan B. I love this more than anything. You know what I mean?
I heard you talk on one of the podcasts about sacrifice, and I love that concept. And you said almost verbatim the sentence that I wrote in my book. You're talking about sacrifice, and for a lot of people that's a derogatory word, right? Or they misunderstand what that means. If you're going to grow something, take it to the top, be great, do something exceptional, tons of sacrifice involved. But what you said resonated with me, and I want people to understand this, that when you find something you love and you're making those sacrifices, it's easy. It doesn't feel painful. You do it joyfully because it's in service to what you love and what you're trying to build.
Yeah.
And I wish more people understood that sacrifice is okay in the name of whatever it is, something that you love. And conceptually, we understand that, right? I mean, it's like, oh, I love this person, so I'm going to sacrifice my nightlife or running around. It's like, yeah, of course, obviously. But when
it almost doesn't even feel like a sacrifice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
when it comes to like our business life, people aren't sometimes willing to make the sacrifices because they don't want the pain associated with it. It's like when it's in the name of something that you love and you're trying to build, and you have, again, the end in mind. Like you sacrifice. How long you been married? 4 years?
No, 5 years now. I'm trying to think. It was 6. Yeah, 5 years.
Okay. There were sacrifices early over the last, number of years where your wife was probably like, I wish you were home more. I wish you were doing this. And you were making these sacrifices. And look at where it's at now. You just said your wife's about to come to work with you. You can have your kids around. You were able to build it to this point where now you can really have the life that you want to have within all of this, right? And it's not that you liked missing all that time with your wife or whatever, but you did it joyfully and it wasn't painful because you knew what you were building and you knew you had an outcome in mind. And the best things I have in life are because I made huge sacrifices for them, and I don't regret any of them, and they weren't painful. I did it joyfully because of what it allowed me to do and the life it's allowed me to have.
Love it, man. Jim, man, this won't be the last time I have you on here. We'll talk maybe more about your book and what you got going on next. But, bro, I really appreciate you coming.
Yeah.
Some huge heavy hitters for me, and I'll see you tomorrow morning. 7 a.m.
Absolutely.
My dog.
Appreciate you,
Jim.
man. Thanks, Tay.
Yep.
All right, bro.